My name is Emory Moore Jr. and this is Exercise and Movement Techniques. Today we are here with Sifu Kenny Lopez, 28 years of martial arts training in Kung Fu, and thank you for talking to us.
Thank you.
I know that 28 years goes back even more than that because I know you personally, so I know that you had some other things happening too. So can you give us a journey, a quick journey?
A quick journey. At age about 12, I studied Goju karate, which I couldn't keep doing because of the whole running barefoot in the cold. My asthma would act up and I got very sick.
Yes, that's very interesting. You mentioned that you were running in the streets of New York City barefoot.
Yes.
You don't see that often.
You don't see that much at all. But we did it. Summer, winter, snow, we ran out there.
Was that before lawyers or after lawyers?
Before foot surgery.
Wow. Okay, so so you went from Goju.
I went from Goju, I got very sick, and then I decided to search for a martial arts school.
Okay.
Kung Fu school, because that's what I was really interested in. And Chinese martial arts. It took a long time of searching, different schools.
What year was this about?
It's in the 80s. It's in the 80s, so exactly around a year. But it was a lot of searching. It took many years of going to different schools and seeing what they had. I never went to Chinatown to learn because there was the whole stigma of the Chinese only teaching Chinese.
It could be dangerous at that time going down there.
I was not going down there.
Right.
So I decided to look for books to learn. I figured I'd find a book, learn something from a book, and do whatever I could with it. I found in a magazine an advertisement for a bookstore at the Chinese Kung Fu Wushu School here in New York City. And it was a mistype. They mistyped it in. I went there looking for a book. They said, we don't have books, but we have a school. Have a seat and take a look. And that was it. I was hooked.
Who was the instructor? Who started Kung Fu Wushu?
Alan Lee.
Okay.
Is the Grandmaster. And my personal teachers were, of course, Ray Alberts and Singh.
Okay. There are a lot of options out there in terms of Kung Fu, like you said. And you said you were actually investigating. What is it about Kung Fu Wushu that called you?
That's interesting. When I was doing karate before then, I had a situation where I had a spar with a student.
Okay.
And my error being very young, I punched him in the throat.
Oops.
And he went down and I was very scared, so I never wanted to fight again. And it was interesting because I still wanted to learn martial arts and I wanted to learn Kung Fu. When I found Alan Lee School, at the time you didn't fight for a good year or a year and a half. So I figured I'd do it for a year and a half, and then leave when they told me I'd have to fight. And of course that never happened. I ended up staying.
Wow. No, well, as a young man, I can see with that being quite traumatic. I had a really nasty incident one of the first times I sparred with somebody, actually. I dislocated their finger in an exchange. It wasn't on purpose, like you said, it was an oops. And they didn't get taken care of, and they had to actually get their finger amputated. And so that was kind of like, oh my gosh, you know. So I can totally understand. And you know, a lot of people don't necessarily understand that because you're a martial arts practitioner does not necessarily mean you like to fight or like to hurt people.
Exactly.
Sometimes it's the complete opposite, actually.
We're trying to avoid fights and not get into altercations.
Right, and then you can still be a compassionate person even though you're practicing martial arts, and the higher tenets of martial arts is not to be violent.
Right.
It may seem as if, you know, that's something that's only in the movies, but
yeah, one of the rules, of course, at the school is always to become a better person and to live a better life. Not so much to go out there and beat anybody up that you could. And I found that very important, basically.
Well, there was a time when you did that, you would be excommunicated, you would be cut off from the school.
Correct.
I remember having a conversation a few years back with Mestre No from Capoeira, Angola, and he was making comments about how he was seeing that capoeira was becoming more violent but less dangerous. And I found that to be a very interesting comment, because you see more violence now with people hitting each other and coming out with ferocity and beating the living crap out of each other. But the techniques that you learn that are very, very dangerous, that require you to have self-discipline and holding back when you're exchanging with each other, are being moved out.
Mm-hmm.
You're more towards sports and towards a continuation of a battle, as opposed to techniques that will end a battle quicker and require more responsibility from a person when they're learning. And I'm not to say that MMA and contact fighting as a sport is not dangerous, because we all know that people have been killed during it.
Yes.
But it's a lot different than doing techniques that, you know, can potentially be lethal from the beginning, and that you have to practice in a way in which you do not execute them fully, because you would injure your partner grievously.
That's true.
You know, because I know in the beginning you don't practice with equipment. Am I correct? There's
Right.
no
Okay.
safety equipment.
No. Some cases you might wear a cup, but that is it.
Right.
Everything else, and we start. It's very slow in the stages of its fighting, because the beginning it's just movement. Then it's eyesight concentration, where you're not even close to each other, and the teacher can actually walk in between the students. Then you go to like contact, medium contact, heavy contact. But all this is in stages. You don't just go in there and just start punching away at each other.
Right.
You know, then it's too easy for the mistake that happened to me in karate would happen there.
So by the time you were actually involved in contact, you had a series of progression and a long education actually
Yes.
in control.
Yes. You had the body conditioning. You had the control of your techniques. You know, you also had this different set of mindset of knowing how dangerous you are and how you can pull it back and not be dangerous, and teach more than just beat.